Anna and Ryan, a love rewritten audiobook. Greenfield was a small town where life moved gently, like a soft breeze through the trees. It wasn't crowded or loud. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's name, where you could walk down Main Street and hear familiar greetings. The kind of town where stories were told over front porch swings and secrets were kept carefully, wrapped in quiet smiles. In Greenfield, time didn't rush. Days passed slowly, like they had all the time in the world. The seasons changed but the town stayed steady. And in this calm, 1,000 quiet stories lived, invisible to most. One of those stories was about a girl named Mathew. Anna was not the kind of girl who drew attention. She was soft-spoken and often seemed lost in thought. People sometimes thought she was shy or cold, but really, Anna's heart was full of dreams and feelings she didn't know how to say out loud. She lived in the world she created on paper. With her sketchbook always tucked under her arm, she carried a secret place inside herself, where she could be anyone, anywhere. Anna had long dark hair that fell over her face like a curtain, and her fingers were usually smudged with pencil or charcoal. She wasn't interested in parties or crowds. Instead, she found peace in quiet places, the old library with its dusty books, the empty art room with its sunlit windows, and especially the big oak tree behind the school. That tree was her sanctuary. She would sit there for hours, sketching scenes she dreamed of, places she hoped to see one day. Her drawings were more than just pictures. They were windows to her soul. She drew cities she longed to visit, the twisting canals of Venice, the narrow streets of Paris, the old bridges of Prague. She sketched faces she had never met, but imagined with a tenderness she kept locked deep inside. Her art was the language her heart spoke when words failed. Then there was Ryan Wilson. Ryan was everything Anna was not: loud, bold, and impossible to ignore. He was the star quarterback of the school football team, the kind of boy who walked into a room and made everyone look up. Ryan had a laugh that was loud and free, a smile that seemed to light up even the darkest hallways. Teachers loved him. Students wanted to be his friend. Everyone knew his name. But beneath that confident exterior was a boy who often felt alone. The cheers and applause didn't fill the emptiness inside. Sometimes, when the crowd's roar faded away, Ryan would sit in his room, staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone really saw him, the real him. Ryan and Anna were like two different worlds, she, a quiet river flowing deep beneath the surface, and he, a bright flame burning in the open. They seemed unlikely to cross paths. But sometimes, fate has a way of bringing opposite worlds together. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon during junior year, in the art room bathed in warm sunlight. Anna was sitting by the window, her pencil moving gently across the page, drawing a quiet street with shadows that seemed to stretch like soft whispers. She was lost in her world, not noticing the late arrival of Ryan Wilson, who took the only empty seat beside her. Ryan was out of place in the art room. He didn't know how to hold a pencil properly. He was bored and restless. But as he glanced sideways at Anna's drawing, something caught his eye. It wasn't just lines and shapes, it was a feeling, raw and real, that pulled at his heart. "You're amazing," he said without thinking. Anna blinked, startled. She didn't expect those words, especially from someone like Ryan. Her voice was barely a whisper when she replied, "Thanks." That small moment was the spark, the beginning of a story neither of them could have predicted. From that day on, Ryan found excuses to be near Anna. He asked questions about shading and perspective, borrowed pencils he didn't really need, and lingered longer in the art room. He was fascinated by the quiet girl who didn't try to be anyone but herself. Anna wasn't sure what to think of Ryan. He was loud and confident, the kind of boy she usually avoided. But something about his presence made her feel lighter. When Ryan was around, she laughed more, and the colors in her drawings grew brighter. Their friendship grew slowly, like a delicate flower pushing through cracks in the sidewalk. They started meeting after school beneath the old oak tree, their secret place where the world felt softer, and time seemed to stand still. Under the shade of those wide branches, they shared pieces of themselves. Ryan told Anna about the pressure of being the star athlete, how exhausting it was to live up to everyone's expectations. Anna spoke about her dreams of travel and adventure, of the cities she wanted to see and the life she hoped to build. One afternoon, Ryan surprised Anna by giving her a sketchbook with, "To my amazing artist," written in soft, flowing script across the cover. "For your drawings," he said quietly, a shy smile on his face. Anna's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not just as the quiet girl in the corner, but as someone important. Their days became filled with small, meaningful moments. Ryan carried Anna's sketchbook when her hands were full. Anna cheered for Ryan at his games, sitting quietly in the stands, pencil in hand, sketching the way he moved on the field. Ryan would sneak glances between plays, breathless and sweaty, and Anna's heart would flutter like never before. They learned the language of each other's hearts. Anna noticed how Ryan's smile faltered when he was tired. Ryan saw the way Anna's eyes sparkled when she talked about art. Their friendship was messy and beautiful. There were misunderstandings, awkward silences, and moments when neither knew what to say. But through it all, their bond grew stronger, a fragile, precious thing built on trust and understanding. Together, they created a world where they could be themselves, where silence was not lonely and noise was not overwhelming. They were two halves of a whole, slowly finding their way to each other. The days turned into weeks, and Anna and Ryan grew closer with every passing moment. Their friendship was no longer just a quiet companionship, it blossomed into something deeper, something that made their hearts race and their breaths catch in ways they hadn't expected. It started with small touches, an accidental brush of fingers as they passed a pencil, a hand lingering a little longer on a sketchbook, a shy glance exchanged beneath the shade of the old oak tree. These moments were electric and terrifying all at once. Neither of them had been prepared for the flood of feelings that came rushing in. One afternoon, the school was buzzing with the excitement of an upcoming football game. Ryan had been practicing hard, the weight of the team's hopes resting heavily on his shoulders. Anna watched him from the sidelines, her sketchbook forgotten as she traced the lines of his determined face with her eyes. She could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands trembled slightly before the big play. After the game, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Ryan found Anna waiting by their oak tree. She was leaning against its sturdy trunk, her eyes bright with something she couldn't quite name. "Hey," Ryan said softly, sitting beside her. They sat in silence for a moment, the quiet between them filled with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant cheers from the stadium. Then Ryan reached out, hesitating for just a second before taking Anna's hand in his. His fingers were warm and steady, and Anna's heart seemed to explode with joy. "I like this," Ryan whispered, voice trembling. "Being with you. Like this." Anna's cheeks flushed, and she squeezed his hand gently. "Me too." Their first kiss came soon after, shy and sweet, beneath the golden light of the setting sun. It was a moment frozen in time, the kind of moment you hold on to forever. Ryan's lips were soft and nervous, and Anna felt as if the whole world had fallen away, leaving only the two of them beneath that old oak tree. From then on, their love grew in bursts of laughter and stolen kisses. They spent hours talking about their dreams, their fears, and everything in between. Anna showed Ryan her favorite drawings, each one a piece of her heart. Ryan shared stories about his family, his hopes for the future, and the pressure he felt to be perfect. They became each other's refuge, a safe place from the storm of high school life. Anna's quiet strength calmed Ryan's restless spirit, and Ryan's laughter brought light to Anna's quiet days. But love, especially first love, is never simple. There were moments of doubt and fear, of jealousy and misunderstandings. They argued about silly things, missed texts, forgotten plans, and the pressures pulling them apart. But each fight ended with trembling apologies and tearful embraces, their hearts learning how to forgive and hold on. One night, after a particularly hard argument, Anna lay awake, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. She wondered if love was supposed to hurt this much, if it was supposed to feel so fragile. Ryan felt the same. He sat in his room, staring at the ceiling, wishing he could be everything Anna needed. The weight of expectations, family, friends, football, pressed down on him, threatening to crush the beautiful thing growing between them. Despite the struggles, their love was real. It was messy and imperfect, but it was theirs. They dreamed of a future together, a future where they could be free from doubt and fear, where love was enough to hold them through anything. Under the old oak tree, they promised to try. To hold on. To believe. Because sometimes, love is about fighting for the person who makes your heart beat faster, even when the world feels like it's falling apart. Senior year arrived not with gentle footsteps, but with the loud, crashing thunder of expectation. What once felt like a peaceful rhythm between Anna Mathew and Ryan Wilson began to feel like something slipping through their fingers, no matter how tightly they tried to hold on. It started slowly, not with a fight, not with an event, but with a shift. A quiet, almost invisible drift, like a boat that's no longer anchored. One minute they were laughing beneath the oak tree, planning their weekend together, whispering dreams into the wind. The next, something had changed. Ryan was being pulled in 100 directions. College scouts had started showing up to every game, notebooks in hand and eyes sharp with judgment. Recruiters called at all hours. His coaches had become stricter, fiercer, treating every practice like a battlefield. The world was watching, and it expected something brilliant from him. He didn't say it out loud, but Anna could feel it in his presence, or rather, his absence. He started missing their after-school rituals. The oak tree stood alone more and more often, its falling leaves becoming the only witness to the silence growing between them. At first, she understood. She really did. She tried to tell herself he was tired, that football was demanding, that these were his dreams coming to life. She waited patiently beneath the oak tree longer than she should have. She sketched in the quiet, drawing scenes of empty benches and stormy skies, as though her pencil could process the ache forming in her chest. When he did show up, he wasn't the same. His smiles were shorter. His kisses were rushed. He answered her questions with half-hearted words and didn't ask about her day anymore. And when she brought it up, gently, lovingly, he would shake his head and whisper, "I'm just tired, Anna." But tired wasn't the right word. Tired wasn't what made him stare blankly at his phone during their conversations. Tired wasn't what made him cancel their dates and never reschedule them. Tired wasn't what made her cry herself to sleep while holding the drawing she'd once made of him laughing, a version of him that now felt so far away. As the days passed, she watched her heart crack a little more with each unanswered message, each excuse, each time she saw him walking down the hall and pretending not to notice her waiting eyes. Their friends had started to notice the change too. "Is everything okay with you and Ryan?" a classmate asked gently one afternoon. "You seem different lately," she said. Anna didn't answer right away. She kept her eyes on the sketch in front of her, a tree bending under the weight of a storm, its branches twisted, its roots clinging to the earth like they were afraid to let go. "I don't know," she said finally, her voice barely more than a breath. "It feels like he's slipping away, and I don't know how to stop it." The classmate nodded slowly. Thoughtful, she replied, "Maybe you shouldn't try to stop it." Anna swallowed hard, the words sitting heavy in her chest. Maybe that was true. Maybe love wasn't supposed to be something you had to fight to keep alive. But still, she looked back at her drawing, the way the tree refused to fall, and she knew. She wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. She tried to fight for them in small ways. She left notes in his locker, silly, sweet messages with tiny doodles of footballs and hearts. She baked his favorite muffins and brought them to practice. She waited outside the locker room, even when it meant standing in the cold for an hour. She kept drawing pictures of them together, of what they used to be. But love isn't always enough when one person is too afraid to say they're drowning. Ryan wasn't cruel. He wasn't heartless. But he was overwhelmed, and in his panic, he built walls instead of bridges. "I'm just trying to get through this," he'd say. And Anna wanted so badly to say, "Then let me get through it with you." But every time she tried, the words caught in her throat. She felt like a ghost haunting his life, seen, but not truly noticed. Then came the night everything broke. It was the kind of rain that didn't feel like weather. It felt like the sky was grieving. Thick drops fell from the heavens in sheets, soaking everything in sight. Anna stood at the corner of the street near his house, her hair plastered to her skin, her coat heavy with water, waiting. Ryan had told her he'd meet her after his late practice. He never showed. She didn't call him. She just walked. She walked through the rain, heart pounding, breath shaking, all the way to the field. But the stadium was empty. She made her way down the familiar roads, drenched and tired, until she saw him, walking with some teammates, laughing. It wasn't the laugh that hurt. It was the ease of it. It was the fact that she hadn't heard that laugh in weeks. "Ryan," she called out. He stopped. His friends faded into the background as he turned to face her, eyes widening with surprise, and then guilt. "Anna? What are you doing out here? You're soaking wet." "I waited for you," she said, each word sharp, raw. "You said you'd meet me." "I forgot. I'm sorry." "That's all you ever say now," she snapped, tears mixing with rain. "You're always sorry. But you never change." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Anna, can we not do this right now?" Her heart thundered. "Why? Because it's inconvenient? Because you're with them?" "I'm not asking for much, Ryan. I'm asking for the boy who used to wait for me under that tree, who used to care." His voice rose. "I still care." "No," she said. "You care about football. About being seen. About being everything for everyone. But you're not here for me. Not anymore." A pause. Then came the crack, sharp and final. "I'm just trying to breathe, Anna," he shouted, hands clenching at his sides. I can't do everything. I can't be everything. She stepped back, rain washing over her face like tears she didn't need to hide anymore. Then don't promise me forever if you can't even give me today. Silence wrapped around them, thick and heavy. They stood in the downpour, soaked and shivering, but neither moved. The rain blurred the world around them, washing away everything but the weight of what was left unsaid. And then Ryan whispered the words she had feared all along. Maybe this should be goodbye. His voice was soft, almost hesitant, but it hit her like a storm crashing through fragile glass. She opened her mouth to speak, to beg, to plead, but no sound came. He turned before she could respond, footsteps fading into the rain. And she didn't call after him. For a long moment, she just stood there, numb and breathless, the chill sinking deep into her bones. Then her fingers loosened around her sketchbook. It slipped from her hand, pages fluttering open and splaying out across the wet pavement like the scattered fragments of her broken heart. The world felt suddenly emptier, colder, as the rain mingled with the tears she refused to let fall. Every line she had drawn, every secret she had poured onto those pages, now seemed to echo the ache inside her, a quiet testament to a love slipping through her fingers. She knelt down slowly, gathering the soaked sketches one by one, her hands trembling. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, all she knew was the hollow ache of goodbye, and the fragile hope that maybe, somehow, she could find herself again. The days that followed were numb. The world felt dim, quiet, and wrong, like a song played out of tune, or a painting drained of its colors. She moved through school like a ghost, her voice barely more than a whisper, her footsteps soft and uncertain. The oak tree, once a secret sanctuary where she and Ryan shared stolen moments, stood empty every afternoon, its branches casting long shadows that felt colder than before. Her sketchbooks, once bursting with color and light, slowly filled with rainstorms and broken hearts, with silhouettes of him walking away, blurry shapes dissolving into empty spaces. The pages held the ache she couldn't speak aloud, each stroke a silent cry. She tried to smile, to force herself into the future she had planned, focusing on her art portfolio for college, pouring her energy into every line and shade. But even her teachers noticed. The fire that had once sparked in her eyes now flickered faintly, like a candle struggling against the wind. Ryan didn't reach out. Not once. But Anna still saw him, in the crowded halls, at the games under the bright stadium lights. She watched him laugh with his friends, but it was a hollow sound now, a mask worn to hide the emptiness beneath. There was no joy in it. Just noise, echoing through the space between them. She caught glimpses of him on Monday mornings, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, shoulders heavy with things he couldn't say. She knew the parties were distractions, desperate attempts to fill the silence she left behind. She knew the fleeting fame, the attention from others, none of it could touch the hollow spot inside him. Yet, he still wore the bracelet she had made him, a thin, braided red string with their initials tied in a tiny knot. The thread frayed at the edges, worn from days and nights, but he didn't take it off. Not even once. And that small, stubborn act held both comfort and pain for Anna, a quiet reminder that somewhere beneath the distance and silence, something fragile still remained. They both tried to move on. She buried herself in her art, losing hours to sketches and colors that somehow tried to make sense of the chaos inside her. He threw himself into football, running harder, faster, hoping the noise of the crowd could drown out the silence that filled his nights. But when the world was asleep, when the lights went out and the day's bravado slipped away, he lay alone in the dark, tears streaming down his face. He cried for the words he wished he could take back, the harsh things he said that night, the way his voice had cut through the fragile bond between them. He wished he could rewind time, soften the edges of that moment, erase the pain he had caused her. He longed to reach out, to hold her hand and tell her he was sorry, but the weight of his pride and fear kept him silent. Did she think about him, too? Did she wonder if he regretted letting her go? They both wrestled with the same questions, lying awake in their separate rooms, haunted by the space growing between them. And yet, neither found the courage to bridge the distance. Weeks slipped into months. Winter came and went, leaving behind the cold residue of regret. Senior year crept toward its final chapter, a time for goodbyes, for moving forward, even when hearts still ached for what could have been. People stopped asking Anna about Ryan. The questions that once hung in the air, soft, curious, worried, vanished, leaving a hollow silence that echoed louder than any words ever could. And Ryan stopped checking his phone. That small hope, fragile and desperate, that her name might still appear on the screen slowly died, slipping away like a fading heartbeat. But the silence between them wasn't just an end. It was a chasm. A vast, aching emptiness where sorrow settled like a shadow, heavy and cold, wrapping around their hearts with a quiet cruelty. And yet, beneath the weight of grief, something stubborn refused to die. A fragile flicker of hope, fragile as a whispered prayer in the dark, as a single breath held in the cold. Because no matter how many lonely nights passed, no matter how many tears went unseen, they never stopped carrying each other inside them. They never truly said goodbye. They just paused. Caught between what was lost and what might still be, suspended in a silence that spoke louder than any words. And sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones that end with a final farewell. They are the ones that ache in the quiet, that wait patiently in the shadows, that hold on to the smallest chance of a new beginning, even when it feels impossible. Because sometimes love isn't about endings. It's about the spaces in between, the pauses where hearts break and heal, where silence holds both the pain of what was and the hope for what could still be. Years passed like soft whispers of wine through the trees of Greenfield. Time, that slow-moving river, had carried Anna and Ryan far from the small town that held their young love and their deepest heartbreak. Anna had left first. She chased her dreams with fierce determination, enrolling in art school and setting out to see the cities she had once only sketched in quiet moments. Paris, Venice, Prague, places that had lived in her mind's eye now became memories she carried with her, breathed into existence by the strokes of her brush and the rhythm of her footsteps. Yet no matter where she went, no matter how brightly the lights of those foreign streets shone, the quiet ache in her heart never faded. Ryan's name was etched there, not in bold or bright colors, but as a soft, faded scar that time could never fully heal. A mark she couldn't erase, no matter how much she tried. Ryan's path had taken him far from Greenfield, to a college where the roar of the crowd and the glare of stadium lights should have been enough. He played with fierce determination, every game fueled by a restless energy, earning cheers and praise that echoed around him. But no matter how loud the applause, the hollow ache inside him never quieted. Parties blurred into restless nights, laughter mixing with the pulse of music, but none of it could fill the vast, empty space where Anna's laughter once lived, a sound that now haunted the corners of his mind like a ghost he couldn't chase away. The boy who had once been the school's star quarterback was now a man caught between triumph and torment, grappling with a success that felt meaningless without her by his side. Every touchdown, every trophy, was weighed down by the crushing regret of words said too harshly, moments lost, and a love that slipped through his fingers like sand. He missed her, not in the quiet way people miss someone they see often, but in a raw, aching way that clenched his chest and stole his breath. He missed the way her eyes lit up when she smiled, the soft brush of her hand against his, the quiet moments where the world made sense just because she was there. Late at night, when the world was wrapped in silence and his heart felt unbearably heavy, Ryan would reach for his phone with trembling hands. He wanted, more than anything, to call her. To hear her voice, to speak the words he'd buried deep inside, that he loved her with a fierce, aching passion that hadn't dimmed, no matter how far apart they were. But then the fear would grip him, a cold, paralyzing fear that clenched his throat and tightened around his chest. What if she had moved on? What if the memories they shared were already fading for her, replaced by someone else's name on her lips? What if, when he finally spoke, the voice on the other end no longer held the warmth he craved, that tender sound that used to make the world feel whole? So he stayed silent, holding back a call that might break the fragile threads still holding them together. And in the quiet darkness, he cried, not just for the love he missed, but for the courage he lacked to reach out and fight for it. He cried for the love he couldn't hold on to, for the pain he'd caused, and for the girl whose absence left a silence louder than any stadium roar. He carried that heartbreak with him, a weight heavier than any trophy, a scar deeper than any victory. One quiet September afternoon, with the wind cool enough to kiss your skin and the sun hanging low like an old friend, Mathew returned to Greenfield. She hadn't planned it, not really. Her visit home was meant to be brief, just a weekend to catch up with old friends, check on her parents, and stroll the familiar streets that had raised her. That was the story she told herself. But beneath that surface was something deeper, something unspoken, a quiet pull she couldn't resist, a yearning she wasn't yet ready to name. As the trees shed their umber leaves like sighs, Anna drifted almost unconsciously toward the part of town that had haunted her sketches for years, the place she hadn't been able to paint without tears. She turned the corner near the school, where the cracked pavement mirrored the fractures in her heart, and where the old oak tree still stood, tall, silent, and unchanging. It hadn't moved. It hadn't forgotten. Its sprawling branches reached out like arms, waiting to welcome her back. The leaves, painted in gold and orange, floated down like fragile memories, soft whispers from a past she thought she'd left behind but that had never truly left her. And in that moment, beneath the fading light and the rustling leaves, Anna felt the weight of years, the ache of absence, and the fragile hope of something waiting to begin again. Anna walked slowly, her boots crunching against the fallen leaves. With every step, her heartbeat grew heavier, louder. Not out of fear, but something more fragile, like hope tiptoeing into a room it hadn't entered in years. She sat down beneath the tree, knees drawn to her chest, sketchbook resting on her lap. Her fingers moved automatically, pulling out a pencil and opening to a clean page, though her hands trembled more than she cared to admit. She began to draw the branches above her, the way the leaves swirled as they fell, and the way the sunlight filtered through in soft gold patches that danced across the earth. Each stroke of the pencil was a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The longer she sketched, the more the years seemed to fade, like the pain had been slowly waiting for her to return to this very spot so it could finally let go. Her pencil moved more freely now, sweeping across the page, forming the curves of a memory. The smell of the autumn air. The hush that came just before the school bell rang. The sound of laughter, his laughter, echoing faintly in her mind. And then, just like a moment stolen from a dream too vivid and fragile to question, a voice shattered the silence. Anna. Her body froze, breath caught like a fragile bird trapped in her chest. Her heart skipped a beat, then another, then it began to race wildly, tumbling into a frantic rhythm she hadn't known in years. A rhythm filled with panic, disbelief, and a painfully tender hope. She turned slowly, almost afraid to believe what her eyes were seeing. There he stood. Ryan Wilson. Older, taller, broader, time had changed the edges of him, but those eyes held everything she had missed, storms and stories, pain and love, secrets meant only for her. His hair was shorter now, his jaw more defined, but beneath the years, beneath the weight he carried, there was still that soft vulnerability she alone had ever seen. He looked like a man caught between a memory and a dream, struggling to believe she was really here. His voice was raw, thick with emotion, barely more than a whisper, but it carried years of silent longing. I come back every fall, he said, voice trembling. Hoping to see you. And in that moment, the years of silence, the ache of absence, the pain of unsaid words, all of it hung between them like fragile glass, trembling with the possibility of being shattered or held carefully in their hands. Anna's lips parted, but no words came. Her breath caught, lodged somewhere deep in her chest, and all she could manage was a small, fragile nod. Her eyes shimmered with tears, a quiet storm barely held at bay, and she swallowed hard, trying to steady the trembling inside her. I kept drawing this place, she whispered, her voice thick with the weight of years and unspoken pain. I kept drawing it over and over. But I never knew if it would still feel like home. Ryan took a cautious step closer, as if every movement might shatter the fragile space between them. His eyes searched hers with a tenderness wrapped in fear, afraid that speaking too soon might undo everything they were finally finding again. Slowly, he knelt beside her, the crunch of autumn leaves soft beneath him, a small, grounding sound in the quiet of their reunion. I'm sorry, Anna, he said, his voice raw and low, reaching out with trembling fingers to brush gently against hers, the same way he had years ago, when everything between them was new, tender, and heavy with unspoken promises. I'm sorry for walking away. For not being brave enough to stay. For every message I never sent. For every day I didn't come find you. Her hand trembled beneath his, caught in the fragile truth of his words. His voice cracked, trembling under the weight of years lost and words left unspoken. The silence between them seemed to hold its breath as he finally let the truth rise, fragile, aching, desperate, like a whispered prayer. Forgive me, for every mistake, every moment I wasn't there. You mean more to me than I could ever say. I know I don't deserve you, not after all this time, but I never stopped loving you. Those 5 words shattered the quiet like thunder, raw and breaking, ripping through the walls they'd built and the distance that had stretched endlessly between them. In that instant, the years of regret and longing poured out, unspoken pain finally given voice, leaving nothing between them but the fragile hope of a love worth fighting for. And finally, the storm that had lived inside their hearts poured out, not as anger or blame, but as tears, quiet sobs, and trembling hands that found their way back to each other at last. Ryan pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with a desperate tenderness, as if holding her too tightly might somehow keep her from slipping away again. His breath trembled against her hair, voice breaking as he whispered over and over, "Please forgive me, Anna. Please." She could feel the weight of every unspoken apology in his words, the regret that had been buried deep inside him for years now pouring out in quiet, broken fragments. "I was so afraid," he murmured, his hands trembling as they traced gentle, uncertain patterns on her back. "Afraid I'd lose you if I stayed, afraid I wasn't enough. But I see now. I was wrong. I was wrong to walk away. Please forgive me. She didn't say anything at first. She only let his words wash over her, letting the years of pain, distance, and silence unravel between them. I don't deserve you, he continued, his voice raw and choked with emotion. I know that. But I need you to know, you mean everything to me. More than I ever could say. Please, forgive me for all the times I didn't try hard enough. For every day I let slip by without you. Her heart ached with the sincerity in his voice, a voice that carried the weight of all he'd lost and all he hoped to regain. Beneath the ancient oak tree, they sat side by side, two souls who had once shared their deepest selves, now slowly weaving together the fragile threads that had frayed with time. Threads that had held them apart but had never truly broken the bond between them. And in that moment, forgiveness wasn't just a word. It was a bridge, fragile, trembling, but real. Anna's heart, long guarded and bruised, slowly began to soften. She didn't need grand declarations or promises, she just needed to know that he was truly there, willing to face the past, to carry the weight of their mistakes, and to try again. She looked into his eyes, searching for the boy she once knew, the man who had carried her in his heart all these years. And she found him, raw, vulnerable, imperfect, but deeply sincere. I forgive you, she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of what those words meant. Not because it's easy, but because I still love you. It was a surrender and a beginning all at once. A quiet acceptance of the pain and the healing, the losses and the hope. They talked for hours. About everything. About the ache of missing each other, those long, silent nights when Ryan lay awake, scrolling through old pictures, too afraid to send a message that might go unanswered. About the sketch Anna kept hidden deep in every portfolio, a simple drawing of him laughing beneath this very tree, never shown to anyone, never quite ready to let it go, because it was a piece of her heart she wasn't ready to part with. They laughed too, soft, gentle laughter that stirred memories of who they once were, and who they still could be. In that quiet space beneath the oak tree, their hearts began to mend, slowly, carefully, like a masterpiece restored stroke by stroke. And for the first time in years, they felt the fragile, beautiful possibility of a future written not in regret, but in grace. And in between the words, there were quiet moments. Moments where they just looked at each other, really looked. At the faint lines near Ryan's eyes, carved by years of hidden pain. At the way Anna's gaze softened, filled with quiet understanding and forgiveness. There was no need for grand gestures or dramatic declarations. No need for anything but this, presence. This, truth. And in that fragile space beneath the rustling leaves, something fragile and beautiful began to bloom once more. They were no longer the teenagers who had once sat beneath this tree, tangled in dreams and doubt. They were older now. Wiser. And maybe, just maybe, more ready than they had ever been. Then, as if waking from a beautiful dream, Ryan whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. Ryan's voice was barely a whisper, raw and uncertain. Is this a dream? Anna leaned her head gently against his shoulder, her eyes soft with something between relief and wonder. No, she murmured. It's us, finally. Ryan reached out slowly, his hand moving as if through a dream, trembling just enough to betray the storm of emotions inside him. His eyes locked with Anna's, wide and searching, silent, vulnerable, asking for permission in a way words never could. For a long, breathless moment, they held each other's gaze. Time seemed to slow, the world around them fading to a soft blur, the whisper of autumn leaves, the fading golden light, the distant hum of the town, all swallowed by the quiet gravity of the moment. Anna's chest rose and fell with a gentle breath. Her eyes glistened, reflecting the weight of years, the hopes, the regrets, the pain, and the love that had never truly left. Then, slowly, she closed her eyes, a soft surrender that spoke louder than any words. Her eyelids fluttered like delicate wings as she leaned into his touch, tilting her face slightly upward. Ryan's fingers curved around her jaw with a tenderness that was almost reverent, his thumbs brushing lightly over her cheeks, as if afraid to disturb the fragile beauty of the moment. She could feel the warmth of his hands, steady and sure, grounding her after so long adrift. His breath mingled with hers, slow, steady, hesitant, yet full of all the longing he had carried in silence. And then their lips met, a kiss that was gentle and deep, soft as a whispered secret and strong as a vow kept through years apart. It was the kiss of two hearts remembering how to beat together again. It held the ache of the past, the forgiveness they had granted each other, and the tender hope for the future. When they finally pulled apart, it was with slow smiles and eyes still closed, savoring the quiet magic of a moment that was theirs alone, a moment where everything broken began to mend, and everything lost was found once more. As the sun dipped low behind the trees and the sky blushed with the last light of day, they kissed again. It wasn't like the first time, years ago, all nerves and racing hearts. This kiss was slower, deeper, a kiss of coming home, of second chances, of understanding the cost of distance and choosing love anyway. They made no grand promises that night. Not the kind spoken aloud. Not the kind carved in stone. But in every shared breath, every lingering look, they made the promise that mattered most, to show up. To try. To love again. Not like kids, but like people who had lost each other and found their way back. And as the leaves fell gently around them, like time folding softly into itself, Anna and Ryan began the quiet, careful work of writing their story anew. Not from the beginning, but from the moment their hearts remembered how to find their way home. Because some love stories aren't written just once. Some are lived again. Page by page. Heartbeat by heartbeat. And theirs, broken, rebuilt, and held together with time, was always meant to be one of them.